This is Lightning Power Lunch with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli on Lightning Radio.
Time ticks down. The Lightning complete a 3-game homestand sweep. They're up to 72 points. They beat the Calgary Flames 3-0. It's the fourth shutout this year for Andrei Vasilevskiy. He finished with 27 saves. And the Lightning head into this important road trip on a season-long 7-game winning streak.
It was weird that, the 1-0 goal is the one that kind of went in off shin pads and the whole thing, and especially after some of the chances the teams had. But when Calgary was leaning on us a little bit there, especially in the second, we needed him, and he delivered for us. So it's anytime you can hold that lead and he got us to the third period, and then things kind of went our way after that. But he was the guy that kept us in it.
He did, and the Lightning have won 7 in a row. Little different setup here tonight, partner. Or I should say today. We are taping though.
Yeah, for our video audience, it's like Freaky Friday. You're in the Power Lunch Studios. I am home, but I'm still in my work clothes. I guess I'm always in work clothes because we work 12 to 1, even when it's airing 12 to 1. We're working an hour that is going to air from 12 to 1. That is the case. It is literally maybe an hour, not quite an hour after the game ended. Lightning and Flames,
close to it.
You just took the elevator. Did you take the freight elevator, or did you use the Jack Michaels?
We're healthy.
The learned route that Jack Michaels now knows to get from the press box
I had Steve
to
as
other
my
parts
escort.
of Amalie.
He showed me the way.
Oh, okay.
He showed me the way. So
good.
Yeah, it was good. And we're down here, and it's interesting because I think when you looked at the game tonight, I think there were some who were like, all right, what are you going to get out of this game? We had talked about Calgary yesterday, and it's a team that's hovering around a playoff spot, but it's also a team that, I don't know if you get up for a game when Calgary's on the schedule. One, you don't see them often. Two, I just think the way that team is constructed, it's not Edmonton. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you have games like this in an 82-game schedule. I know, Chief and Phil may not want to hear it, but I do believe it. I think some games you just don't have it. And at least through the first 2 periods, the Lightning had 15 shots, and while they had a couple of good looks, Hagel specifically and a couple others, just not generating a ton. And look, some of that I think you give credit to Calgary for the way they play, and we acknowledge that. But I think anybody that watched that game, I think, again, through the first 2 periods, you came away thinking, where's the energy? But the one key
go ahead.
to that was, I was going to say the one key is that you still had elite goaltending keeping you in a game, and eventually you had a lead heading into the third period, and it's a lead they wouldn't give up. But it's a good win. But I think this is also one of those where you look at it and say circumstances maybe played a big part in how the Lightning played, especially early on.
I like their second period more than their first. And look, we just heard the clip from John Cooper. Not everybody sees the game exactly the same way. I am reminded of Basil's comment after the Seattle game. He actually liked the way the Lightning played against Seattle. We disagreed. I mean, the Lightning didn't play terribly against Seattle, but I didn't think that they carried play for much of that game. So I may be in the minority. I didn't like their first period. I thought they improved as the first period progressed. I actually didn't mind their second period, understanding that there were points when the Flames had them pinned back a little bit, particularly toward the end of that second period when the Lightning had an unsuccessful power play that could have made the game 2-0. This was their final power play of the game. It was their third one. They didn't do a lot on it. I thought the Flames got a little juice from that. I think everyone's in agreement the Lightning had a pretty good third period, but I'm going to back up and look at the homestand because we had 3 games all against the West, 3 Lightning wins. three very different games.
Yeah.
And I think this follows on your point, which is it's not like I think what coaches would like to see and what fans would like to see, and maybe players too, although players just play. I mean, they focused on doing what they need to do on the ice.
Right.
You'd like to see the team basically play the same way, regardless of the opponent, night in, night out. I am in agreement with you. I think that is unreasonable. You're going to have points when you're maybe a little more amped up. Yeah, and there are other times when maybe you have a circumstantial disadvantage, like the Lightning have this game coming up, their next home game against Columbus. They're going to be at a disadvantage. They're going to have a game that they've played the night before against one of their arch rivals on the road. Columbus will be sitting in Tampa waiting for the Lightning to arrive. Doesn't mean the Lightning can't win that game, but that's a different vibe than, had the Lightning not had a game scheduled on Monday and they were also, at home. Come home from Washington on Saturday afternoon. They have Monday night off, and then both teams are kind of on equal footing. So the three games, we are kind of repeating ourselves, or at least I am repeating myself from what we've talked about throughout the week. So bear with me, folks. The Sunday game against Seattle. Seattle executed at a higher level than the Lightning. That was not the Lightning's best game in terms of executing with the puck. Part of that, in fact, a lot of it, I think, was due to the fact that was their first game after the break, and Seattle had played the night before. That gave Seattle an advantage. It didn't mean Seattle won the game. Vasilevskiy was a big reason why the Lightning kind of navigated through that, and the Lightning did enough to get the lead and win the game. And they got better. The third period of the Seattle game was the Lightning's best period. Kind of, you would figure, as they shook off the rust, they kind of hit their stride in the third period. That was its own entity, that game. Now you have Edmonton. I think the Lightning were very geared up to play the Oilers, understanding the threat posed by McDavid and Draisaitl. And I said after that game, I thought it was one of their best performances of the season, especially defensively. The job that they did on the superstars of the Oilers and kind of handling what McDavid and Draisaitl were throwing at them, I thought it was an outstanding performance. Now, what you would like to see is just like, all right, well, you have the Calgary Flames coming in. They don't have a McDavid. They don't have a Draisaitl. Just play the same way. Well, I'm not sure that that's reasonable to expect because the Lightning are coming off that tremendous performance. Can you just expect them to, go right out and do it again? When you don't have a McDavid on the other side, when you don't have a Draisaitl, they're the threat of a McDavid, the threat of a Draisaitl actually helped the Lightning, I think, in that game on Tuesday. Calgary's a little different. The Lightning had hammered the Flames the first time they met. I'm not sure if they necessarily remembered that, but the Flames don't have game breakers like the Oilers, and I think the Lightning came into that game a little flat. They were coming off an emotional win, a feel-good win. And, again, they didn't play terribly. I don't think in any of these games have the Lightning just been a team where the wheels have completely come off the wagon. But they were flat at the start of that game. Maybe the first 10 minutes, first 15 minutes. I mean, Matt Coronado gets a chance in the first couple of minutes of the game right down Broadway, off the rush. We didn't really see that in the Edmonton game. And when you saw that, you're like, all right, this is going to be a different sort of game. Vasilevskiy made the save on him. Lomberg had a chance from the side in the first period that was dangerous. Rasmus Andersson gets loose to the left circle. And these weren't super dangerous chances, but guys were open. And the Flames, what we heard from John Abbott on the show, Thursday show, leading up to the game, he's like, the Flames understand to have success, they have to work extremely hard. And I thought we saw a pretty hard-working team. And the Flames were outworking the Lightning, honestly, in the first period. I think that's why they had the advantage. And the Lightning were doing very little with the puck. At one point, shots were 7-3 for much of the period. Now, one of those shots for the Lightning was a breakaway from Brandon Hagel that was kind of against flow of play, and Dustin Wolf made a really good save on him. Right. So the Lightning get a power play. How do they get this power play? They got the power play when the point line stayed on the ice too long. They were thinking offense, and they got stuck, and they were forced to ice the puck. So it's a D-zone face-off. Calgary sends out its top line with Kadri.
Yeah.
Kadri wins the face-off. Or maybe the Lightning won the face-off. I'm trying to remember. But whatever the case, the Lightning were not out of trouble. Like, they were deep in their own zone. Moser has the puck, and Kadri kind of corkscrews him a little bit and gets called for a penalty. Kadri didn't like the penalty, but it's an offensive zone penalty where the Lightning were kind of in a tough spot there. Tired guys on the ice. You're stuck in your own zone. The top line for the Flames, that was their top line with Kadri and Huberdeau and Coronado. They were out on the ice. And the Lightning got kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card there. Like, bad penalty taken by Kadri, even though he didn't like it. He gave the officials an opportunity to call it. They called the penalty, and the Lightning got a bounce. Kucherov throws the puck in front, hits off Uyghur's stick or leg or whatever, and Karam's in the net. No chance for Wolf on that. But what I said at the time, Huberdeau has a chance to clear the zone. Literally seconds before Kucherov scores. If the shoe were on the other foot there, I would be going off about how you have a chance to get the puck down the ice, you fail to do it, you're giving the other team a lifeline, and the Lightning said, thank you very much. Hedman made a good play. Like, he blocked the clearing attempt, but if you're Huberdeau, that puck has to get down the ice. You're in the final minute of the period. You've had a good period. At the very least, you're 0-0. Their penalty kill has not been good this year. It's near the bottom of the league. Lightning scorched them for 3 power play goals on 3 chances in the first meeting. You know that they can score in the power play if you're Calgary. That puck had to get down the ice. It didn't. Lightning say, thank you very much. They get a bounce. You're Calgary, you're like, are you kidding me? We just had a really good period, and we're down 1-0. And I thought the Lightning got better in the second period. I understand, like, Huberdeau did have a chance early in the second. That might have been Vasi's best save of the night. And they had a little pressure after that second period power play the Lightning had near the end of the period. But if I'm thinking back, like, the Flames are only credited with, 9 second period shots? I mean, it's not like they really tilted the ice. I mean, they only had 7 in the first, but what we saw, Greg, was a team that has struggled to score this year. The Flames have struggled to score. And it's kind of like Seattle. Like, they're missing some finishers. They're missing some game breakers. And I thought they were less dangerous in the second than they were in the first. They had some close calls there in the second where Sharon Govich almost had a breakaway, but Kucherov caught him. Lomberg almost had a breakaway, kind of got in the clear and missed the net.
Yeah.
Those were opportunities squandered. And then in the third period, Lightning make a play, and there was nothing lucky about this one. Hagel sets up Chernak, and he has a great finish there. And once it became 2-0, the Flames tried to press in the middle of the period at a power play. They had some zone time. I'm not sure they had a lot of dangerous chances, though, in the third. So what I came out of this game thinking was, even when the Lightning weren't at their best, which they weren't in the first period, if you want to say the first 2 periods, fair enough, the wheels never completely came off, just like the Seattle game. I mean, it's not like the Flames had 20 scoring chances. So the bedrock foundation for the Lightning has been, even when things are not quite going as well as they could be, they're still defending at a reasonably high level. And when they're having a breakdown, Vasilevskiy is bailing them out. He looks so calm in the net and poised, and he's making difficult saves look easy, which is great to see if you're a Lightning fan. So Lightning took care of business. I said this on the show yesterday when it was aired yesterday.
Yeah.
That, this is a take care of business game for the Lightning, and they found a way to get through it, and they got through it even though they maybe weren't at their best for at least a portion of the game, because they limited chances against. It goes back to the same thing that you and I have been talking about basically all year.
Yeah.
The bedrock foundation needs to be defense. Keep the puck out of your own net. You give yourself a chance to get points. And that was, I think, Exhibit A tonight, because they didn't generate a lot. They really didn't. Offensively.
I'm curious. I'd have to look statistically where they are now in goals allowed. I mean, this is pretty impressive what they've been able to do, and we know where they are.
They were 6th. I think they were 6th before the game, and I mean, as we're recording, there are still games going on. So wherever they are, I mean, I think it'll get kind of settled at night's end and kind of in the overnight. But they're definitely top 10. and they may have snuck into top 5 at this point.
Steve says they're 6. They're 6. I mean, that's
I think that's
incredible
heading
because
into play tonight. Yeah.
Heading into play tonight. But, like, you and I have had that conversation. And I actually, look, you were more confident they were going to be a lot better defensively, 5-on-5. But if I were to tell you, partner, they would be 6th at any point in goals allowed this year, I think most fans would say, wow, that's incredible. What do you attribute that to? I know it's a collection of things. We understand that. But it's not a coincidence that they're where they are because the goaltending has been dynamite. And I thought Phil brought up a good point, and you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit in the pregame. I don't know if Vasi's been making these saves where you're like, how did he make those saves? We've seen some seasons where the Lightning have been leaky defensively, and you're seeing Vasi all over the place, and he's making these incredible saves, and you're like, how is he doing it? It feels more controlled. It feels like it's not as there's not a lot of movement, and maybe that's a credit to him because he's playing so well positionally. Whatever it is, it doesn't feel like it. But you look at what he's doing, and he's been a wall. I mean, he's got 38 career shutouts, and he made some timely saves last night, but didn't feel like he was under siege, right? Last night.
Yeah, and he's making the tougher saves look easy, which I mean, I don't know.
I think that's the way
what
to
that
describe
says
it.
about it. Like, has his game changed at all? Is he not being asked to make those acrobatic saves?
Yeah, I don't know.
The athletic saves. The one he made in Huberdeau in the second
Yeah.
period was a pretty athletic save.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
he got over with his right pad, I think, on a rebound. But yeah, I mean, he's been so impressive. I mean, I think we said his save percentage in February before last night's game was 937 or 938. I mean, that clearly went up.
That's incredible.
What did he finish with? 27 saves out of 27 shots. So, look, February was an outstanding month for the Lightning. And, I did hear John Cooper's post-game press conference where he said, in January we finished the game under 500, but I really liked how we were defending. I mean, it wasn't that way in every game, but in a lot of the games, they actually defended pretty well and didn't get results because the puck wasn't going in. Now the puck is going in. This is the sort of game that we just saw between the Lightning and Flames. Had that game taken place in January, the Lightning probably don't get that bounce off Uyghur, right? And maybe we're looking at a 0-0 game in the third period, and that game has a way different feel to it, right? So I guess what Coop said, I heard him say it, he believed that at some point it was going to turn. Because if they could keep defending at the high level that he was seeing, he felt that the goals would start to go in. You need a little bit of faith there, though, because it was a long period where they were snake bitten, and you're like, is this going to turn for them offensively, and can they maintain a pretty high level defensively? And the answer to both was yes. As they hit February, they lost the game to the Islanders at the beginning of the month in overtime that came after they'd beaten the Kings. So they had a win at the end of January, and then they lost in overtime at the start of February. And then they had that key stretch of the 4 divisional games over 6 days, and they won all 4. And that certainly was a springboard for them. So they finished 7-0-1 in February. They are 8-0-1 overall in their last 9. And I said this on the show on Thursday. They've hit their playoff pace metric with 2 games left in this segment. I mean, they've completely changed kind of the view of their season.
Yeah.
With this 10-game segment. And they are going to be at 60 games after they finish this road trip. Even if they don't get a point on it, they will be at playoff pace. And then you got 22 games left. You got 2 10-game segments left. You're heading toward the finish line here. And they've put themselves in a very good position to finish in the top 3 in the division. They may finish higher than 3rd, depending on how things play out. But as I said to Phil at night's end, yes, you'd like to see them move up, right? And you'd like to see them in the mix here with Toronto and Florida and all of that. The key differential, though, is where the Lightning are and where the 9th place team is. Yes. And heading into last night's action, it was an 8-point gap 8 points, the Lightning were ahead of the 9th place team.
Yeah.
And, they picked up 2 points. So as I look, and I believe this is up to date, now they're 10 points up on 9th, which that's the Rangers, Ottawa, Boston, all at 62. But the Lightning, you're either tied in games played or they have games in hand on those teams. 10 points is a huge gap. And then you got teams in between where the Lightning are and those teams are.
Sure.
They have put themselves in this position because of this 10-game segment, because they have gone now 7-0-1 during this 10-game segment.
For sure. And, it's incredible when you think about, finding some different ways to win, going against the competition they're going against. I mean, Calgary had a lot to play for tonight. Calgary's trying to get into the playoffs.
They absolutely are, yes.
You would have thought there was going to be a little bit more oomph to their game, but maybe we have to give credit to...
They competed, though, Greg. They competed. I think that this may be an issue of this is who they are.
Indictment with them? Yeah.
They can't manufacture offense as easily as some other teams. I think that's kind of part of their DNA, which is why they have to work so hard. But they worked hard tonight. They did.
I actually, you mentioned Seattle. I actually think Seattle has more weapons than Calgary up and down the lineup.
Yeah.
I actually like their roster a little bit more. Calgary, I mean, you and I were talking about it right before, the game we were talking about on our show. I mean, after you get past Kadri and Huberdeau, I mean, it feels like there's a little bit of a drop-off. Not saying they don't have good players, but...
They defend pretty
I think
well.
You need more.
I mean, it's kind of interesting. They're a middle-of-the-pack team in a lot of their statistical categories, although Wolf has had a good year.
Yeah.
He's had a better year than Dan Vladar. He's been better at home. They had the split on the FanDuel telecast at the start of the game. They had Wolf's record and numbers at home versus on the road. He has been a much better goalie at home record-wise. I mean, he played pretty well last night, actually, on the road.
Right.
His numbers on the road are more pedestrian. But Coop said, they do defend. They were pretty good at taking away the passes that the Lightning were trying to make, especially in the first period. They had sticks in the lanes. They were positionally sound. They were breaking up some of these potential chances the Lightning had. I mean, it was kind of ironic then that Uyghur's trying to break up a cross-ice pass on the Kucherov goal, and it bounces in on a weird deflection because it's not like his stick was pointed toward the net. It was pointed away from the net, and it still hit the stick or hit the leg or something, and it ricocheted almost like at a 90-degree angle in a weird way, but the Lightning got a bounce there. So you're kind of like, Seattle impressed me a little bit more offensively than Calgary, but maybe Calgary is just a little bit tighter in how they are defending. And, I mean, I do like their decor. Rasmus Anderson's a good player. Kevin Ball's a good player. I mean, I told you what I thought of Uyghur. I think he's terrific. Hanley was kind of an in and out of the lineup guy when he was in Dallas. Remember, he scored in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final when the Lightning played the Stars. He's no longer with the Stars. He's in Calgary. But, I mean, he looked pretty solid. Got into it with Asimon at the end of the game. I didn't know he really had that in his game, Hanley.
Yeah.
So
be it.
I don't know. I mean, the Flames are where they're at for a reason. I mean, they're higher in the standings than Seattle. But they miss the game breakers they had on the team a few years ago. There's no question. Even if they had one of them, or two of them, that might make a huge difference for them. So they're going to have to kind of scratch and claw their way to getting some points.
And who knows what they would do with the trade deadline, too. That's something that maybe they can
Well,
address.
John Abbott said he doesn't think that Craig Conroy is going to, mortgage what he said, basically mortgage the future to try and land a big fish.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Time will tell. But regardless, I think it's an impressive win for the Lightning for the reasons we gave. Maybe not in terms of how well the Lightning played against Edmonton. This was a different type of impressive win. And I think because of the things surrounding it, the Lightning were able to find 2 points. And I think that's all that matters because it wasn't too long ago, to your point, we were having conversations about the Lightning not getting any points in a game like this. and they're getting them. And I think that's very important.
And we can say Calgary is kind of missing some offensive pop. I mean, it's not like they can't score. So even as we say the Lightning weren't quite as sharp maybe as they've been in some other games, they certainly weren't as sharp as they were in the Edmonton game. At the end of the night, the Calgary Flames only had 27 shots on net. It's not like they finished with 47, right? I mean, it's not like the Calgary Flames tilted the ice and the Lightning were in rope-a-dope mode. I mean, we saw a little bit of that when the Lightning were playing on the road in Detroit and Montreal before the Four Nations. Like, that was a different vibe. The vibe that we had in those games where the Lightning jumped out to big leads in both those games, but that was almost like a hold on by your fingernails, right, and find a way to get this game across the finish line. Thank you, Vasi. And they had a high shot volume game against in both the Detroit game and the Montreal game on the road before the Four Nations face-off. This game against Calgary was not one of those games. I mean, they just didn't have the same amount of pressure they were able to apply. They applied some pressure, and I thought that they were, especially at the start of the game, more crisp in terms of like being on it. That they outworked the Lightning maybe in the first 10 to 15 minutes and maybe, you feel into the second. But what did they get out of it? That's what you often say. Like, what did they get out of it? They got no goals, and they really didn't generate much. No, they didn't. What they generated, Vasi took care of. So
it's a good point.
I think that's a positive sign. When the Lightning are not really at their best, they're still able to hold the team, at least in this last game. And I would say the Seattle game, too. Seattle had more shots. But if we look at the Calgary game, they held them at under 30 shots on net for the game. They blocked a fair number. So
it was a good win. And I'm curious what our audience has to say at Bolts Radio. Basil, weighing in, says, when did Kadri get so dangerous? Amazing to come out of that game with a shutout. D was not as tight, but they gave Vasi good looks at most shots, and there are only a few times when the Flames had net front presence. Great to win even when not at your best.
Kadri's a good player, Basil. I mean, I think the Avalanche missed Nazem Kadri. He was a big part of their cup win, which I understand he was hurt for some of the playoffs. And, of course, he came back famously for the Stanley Cup final and scored the overtime goal in Game 4. Right. We all remember the too many men on the ice that wasn't called against Colorado. But Kadri did finish the shot.
Yeah.
He is a very talented player. Is he at the level of Johnny Gaudreau? Rest his soul. Is he at the level of Matthew Tkachuk? I'm not sure I would go that far. And he's kind of by himself on the team.
Yeah.
I mean, he and Huberdeau are trying to build some chemistry, but he's really doing a lot by himself. And even, I agree with you, Basil, that he was dangerous last night at points, but how many super dangerous chances did he actually, by dangerous, I mean like he was darting in the offensive zone, he was like grabbing the puck, he was, disrupting clears, he was trying to impact the game in a positive way. But at the end of the night, like how many grade A's did Kadri have? He had one in the second period where Coronado tapped him the puck and he missed the net. But of the shots that he had on net, how many were high danger chances? Yeah. Vasi stopped one in the first period, I remember. It was either off his block or the shaft of his stick. That might have been his most dangerous, but even that was a longer range shot. So maybe for Calgary, you're like, we need to find a guy to play with Kadri who's got some pop.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Jay says, another big win, very 2022 playoff-esque effort. Everyone grinding, digging deep, and Vasi being elite. Keep it going, hopefully.
Yeah, 2022 when the Lightning were D'ing up well, which, I mean, I think of the 2022 series, particularly when they won the 4 straight against the Rangers after losing the first 2, they were really good defensively. They didn't allow a 5-on-5 goal in the last 4 games of that series. Every goal the Rangers got after Game 2 was a power play goal.
Yeah. Pretty impressive. When you talk about Vasi being elite and the team defending, you are hopeful because that is a recipe to be successful in the playoffs, regardless of the scoring. And that's the part a lot of people wanted to see. I mean, how many questions did people have coming into the season about the goaltending? It's amazing. Yeah. Started to hear those whispers about Vasi. We really did, and we brought those up on our show. Johansson backs up Vasi tonight. But collectively, this has been a tremendous year for both. And it needs to be, I think, talked about a little bit more. And it's good to see it come to fruition here. I heard Brian Engblom on the last call last night, and he was touching on it with JP about Gergensen's being on the second line again, and how
maybe Coop heard you talking about Gergensen's being on the checking line, because it was like right after that they put him on the line with Hagel and Cirelli, and they drew the Kadri line as the assignment.
And maybe there's something there. I don't know. I like Gergensen's, and I think because he has the one goal, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to be elevated to play
night.
with those.
Wolf made the save and dribbled behind him. I don't think it was going in, but one of the Calgary defensemen grabbed it and swept it away.
It'd be curious to find the stat, his expected goal rate.
Yes.
You can do that for goaltenders. Like, what would be the average for Gergensen's this year? Would he be at 6 with all his high danger chances that he's had over the course of the year?
He's had a lot of high danger chances.
He has. And, I think the thing that makes the Gergensen's intriguing on that shutdown line is I think he can skate and he's got some size.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does help. If you can skate and keep up with the Cirellis and the Hagels, you give yourself a chance to be effective if you're playing with them. Now, I think where we look at Gergensen and say, I don't believe he should be in a top 6, is just because you need to produce a little bit more than just the one goal. However, he doesn't look out of place playing with those two. Now, does that mean he's going to stay there and that's going to be the line? I don't know. One thing we know about John Cooper, though, when something is working, he will stick with it until it isn't working.
I will point out, though, at the start of the third period, Asimont was on the line with Hagel and Cirelli, and Asimont was on the line with Hagel and Cirelli when Hagel set up Chernak for the goal. Later they went back to Gergensen's, but the 11-7, it's going to be fluid. Yeah. It is.
Right. And, I think Asimont, from an offensive perspective, is somebody that you would look at and say, okay, I can see that playing maybe here and there on a second or third line because of some of the skill sets that he does have offensively. I don't know where he kind of falls in defensively for John Cooper, but clearly they are at least intrigued by what Gergensen's can do on that line. Does it stick? You and I have had our conversations about this. We don't need to rehash it, but for the time being, and to hear Brian say it, he felt like, and I think the word he used, he's playing with some fire.
Mm-hmm.
He feels excited playing with those guys, and you probably should.
His confidence is higher. I know that some of the confidence is tied to goal scoring, and lack thereof probably isn't helping, although he did score in that Montreal game, which I know was the beginning of the month, but in terms of games, it's been only 4 games. So, he scored fairly recently. But opportunity is breeding confidence. He understands that he is having a positive impact on these games pretty much game in, game out, and the coaches are noticing. Like, Zemgus, you're going on the line with Hagel and Cirelli, and you're going to be checking McDavid.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity. You're going to be on this line that is dealing with Nazem Kadri, who is the most dangerous offensive player on this Calgary team. Go do your job.
Yep.
That's exciting. That's going to help a player's confidence for sure.
A player has one goal this year up to this point, and he's playing on an elevated line. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you have one goal. Some players you'd be sent down. You'd be benched.
Well, Hagel
finds himself in a top 6.
Hagel, Cirelli, and Gergensen's have combined for 50 goals.
Yeah.
It's like the Jack Michaels was saying about Connor McMichael, Tom Wilson, and Alexei Brodus. Because Hagel has 29, Cirelli has 20, and Gergensen's has 1. I'm kind of making a joke here. But, he's playing with 2 guys who have filled the net regularly.
Yeah. So, and sometimes that can elevate your play offensively as well when you're playing with guys like that. And, Gergensen's, I think, he's got some intangibles there that I like on that line. I don't know if I would keep him there, but I'm intrigued. All right, Jared Johnson, our broadcast assistant, who does great work for us, he sent me a note. Now, full transparency here. This looks like my 8-year-old wrote something on this paper. I can't read this, so I'm gonna try and interpret it here. Okay, so Gergenson's 6.5. Is that goals expected? Okay, he's shaking. Yeah, goals. So he's at 6.5, and it's from moneypuck.com.
So they're
So that's
only
where he got that
saying that
information.
he should have 5.5 more goals, which, again, half a goal, really.
Sounds like it.
How are they determining a half a goal?
I don't
All right.
know.
Be that
Now,
as it may.
He has 6.5
He has
times
had more.
6.
He has had more than 5 glorious chances to score. I mean, he's hit how many posts recently?
Yeah.
Wouldn't each of those be an expected goal if you're hitting the crossbar and the post? I mean, I just don't know their methodology, which is why I don't really pay attention to the expected goals. By the way, did you see?
Goals.
So we got an email. My mouth started watering when I read this email. He was like, talk about throwing me like a softball pitch that I can just hammer. So this came.
Wait, did you get? You got an email?
Did you get this? He sent it to you. I'm looking at it
sure I
right
did.
now.
I'm sure I did.
All right, this is from. Well, this was
Is it from Summit?
Summit or Sumit. I'm not sure. This came
Sumit?
yesterday. All right, this was the email. This is not me saying I. This is the email correspondent saying I. I feel like I have a decent grasp of hockey analytics, but there is one stat I can't quite wrap my head around. This year,
I did read this.
The
this
Lightning
hurt my
have
head when I was reading it.
245 takeaways and 830 giveaways. Looking at past years, this is a metric that is usually closer to 50-50. The 830 giveaways alone is a massive amount compared to past years. The Lightning are a better 5-on-5 team this year, so I don't quite get this. What does this metric say about our team, and is it a cause for concern? It is not a cause for concern, Sumit, or Summit, however you say your name. I'm sorry. Well, look, if you were here, I would ask him how to say his name. We had a couple of guests actually in the booth for the Calgary game. I'm like, how do you say your name?
Did they listen? Oh, okay.
Actually, Steve gave me the phonetics on one. He anticipated this was going to be tricky.
Yeah.
There was another one where I asked Steve, and the guy was there. He's like, you actually say it this way. I'm like, okay, thank you very much. So Sumit, the giveaway takeaway stat is the most. Both of them are two of the most ridiculous stats that they put on the game sheet. And you are correct. For the Lightning to be an improved. So let's just say as a baseline, when the Lightning finished last year, tied for 22nd in goals allowed per game, and were worse than that, 5-on-5.
Right.
According to Sumit, they were 50-50 in giveaways and takeaways, meaning that they took some, they gave some. Like they had some turnovers that they caused, they had some turnovers that they had themselves. So you would figure that it should even itself out. They were an underwater 5-on-5 team last year. So if they were underwater last year and their giveaway takeaway ratio was 50-50, and this year we just gave you the numbers, their giveaway number is way higher than their takeaway number. How on earth could they be that much better defensively 5-on-5? They are that much better defensively 5-on-5 because that stat is not telling you anything valuable. This is in the eye of the beholder who's tracking this in different buildings. So, and I'm not trying to pick on whoever's doing it for the Lightning. This is the job that they were given. It's a hard job.
Sure.
You know how often the puck changes hands in a game? And you have to make a determination whether the team that lost the puck, did they give it away or did the other team actually take it away? Or was it neither? If they actually tracked pucks changing hands, the giveaway takeaway number would be like 4 digits, not 3 digits, 5 digits maybe, if we tracked it for the whole year. They need to get rid of this stat. It tells you absolutely nothing about what is going on in a game with one caveat. One caveat. The guys who are really, really good defensively do tend to lead the league in takeaways. Whether it was Pavel Datsyuk back in the day, Mark Stone is very, very good at it. Mitch Marner. I don't know if Mitch Marner is one of the leaders in takeaways. They are slippery. Like, they can take the puck off your stick. That is legit. You tell it not from like cumulative stats. You can tell it by watching them play and how sneaky they are, right? And how difficult they are to try and elude when you have the puck and they are trying to take it away from you. So the Lightning are a better 5-on-5 team defensively this year because they are not turning the puck over as much as they did last year. So you can understand why I was eager to address that. So I'm on board with the fan who is like, this makes no sense to me. Yes, it's not supposed to make sense to you, because I would much rather they took those two stats away and told us something like possession time or zone time that would give you a more accurate picture of like flow of play, basically.
Sumit.
I'm not crazy about the hit stat either, but he didn't talk about that.
I was going to say that. I feel like you mentioned the hit stat that's a pet peeve of yours too.
I think that, again, that's in the eye of the beholder, and I don't really know what it tells you. I mean, sometimes, a physical game may have more hits, and there are some teams that like to play physically, and they may be among the league leaders in hits. But if you have a lot of hits, that might just be an indication that you don't have the puck a lot. So you're forced to check, right? I don't think that it necessarily tells you about how a team plays. And also, like, in one building, a nudge is a hit, and in another building, like, rattling a guy in the glass is the only thing that'll get you a hit, right? So it's a little different. Like, a face-off win is a face-off win is a face-off win. A shot on goal is a shot on goal is a shot on goal. A hit, a giveaway, a takeaway, that's way more subjective. And once you introduce subjectivity into this and you're going from building to building with different sets of eyes trying to make this determination, I just think there's no consistency to it.
It's a good point. It is a very good point. I'm just trying to scroll here to see if there's anything else. Looking at our Deandra Liu actually DM'd me during our show the other day, and she had Nick Paul on the Bolts win against Edmonton. Quote, when their best player is on the ice and you've got them working the D zone, it's tiring, and it just keeps the puck off their stick. With top players like that, the best defense is a strong offense. And she said, this is what you've been saying all season. We both been saying.
She's bumping your tires, Greg.
We appreciate that.
I agree with you, but what I agree with you. I'd love, like, if this were a football game, you'd love to see that the Lightning had the ball the whole game, right? And didn't have to play defense, or by having the puck, they made playing defense a lot easier. But there are going to be points where the other team does press, and then you have to be able to answer the bell when you have a shift without the puck. How are you going to handle it when McDavid has the puck? And as we said, the Lightning hung in there against him.
Yeah.
But yes, they helped their game overall by forcing McDavid and Draisaitl to spend much of that game without the puck.
This comes from Gary. He wants to know, with Johansson backing up Vasi, when do you think his next start will be?
Back-to-back coming up. I mean, I would probably venture that Vasi's going to get the at-Florida game, and Johansson will get home against Columbus.
That'll be a tough game.
Look out for Columbus.
As we know, Columbus can play.
You know, Ryan McDonough entered the game last night leading the NHL in plus-minus. And
did he go up?
I think he went up. I think he would have been on the ice when Chernak scored, right? Yeah, he was +1. You know, he was number 2 in the NHL in plus-minus as of the start of play yesterday. I believe he was number 2. Kirill Marchenko for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
You would have given me 10 guesses. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see him there. And I think it's more that, like, they've just been scoring like crazy. I'm actually going to check it and see where that is right now. Again, games are still going on, so it's a little hard to know. Yeah, Marchenko's number 2. So Marchenko was +1 tonight. McDonough was plus. Actually, this is not accurate. So this is still as of start of play. So I guess they kind of reset the league stats once all the games are done.
Yeah.
So McDonough was at plus 35. He's now at plus 36. Marchenko was at plus 34. He was plus 1 tonight. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
He's now at plus 35. He's kind of the only Columbus guy. I'm not sure I see it. No, there's no other Columbus guy on this first page of plus minus, but that is very impressive. He's got 24 goals.
Can
60
Columbus make the
points.
playoffs giving up as many goals as they give up?
Well,
That's
if
the
they are
question.
going to improve defensively, though, I mean, they just beat Detroit last night 5-2.
Right. They're giving up 3.25 goals against.
Yeah, that's pretty high. At some point
That's a lot.
this next week, I should do the old top 16 teams defensively and how many of those teams are currently in a playoff spot. Columbus
it's a great
clearly is
question
one of the
because-
teams that is not in the top half defensively, but is in a playoff spot. But they are in the minority. Most of the teams that are in the top half defensively are in a playoff spot.
Yeah, the top 10 teams that give up the most goals per game. San Jose.
All right, so let's
Pittsburgh.
dip our toe in the pool. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Greg.
San Jose, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Buffalo, Montreal, Nashville, Philadelphia, Columbus, Seattle, and Boston.
Yeah, so the only team that's in a playoff spot of those 10 is Columbus. If you go the next 6, which would be the bottom half, maybe there's another team or two. Maybe Detroit. Is
Yeah,
Detroit in the
Detroit's at
bottom half?
11. Detroit's at 11.
Okay, so in other words, 11th worst.
Yes, 11th worst. Correct.
Yeah. So the two
I mean, that's-
wild card teams in the East are below the halfway point of the defensive metric.
I mean, that's not a good stat. I mean, that
No.
you know, we have seen Columbus. We know they can score. And I think it was one of the things that maybe you brought up or you kind of made the analogy. They kind of just let them play and say, look, we'll figure out the defensive part at some point, but we got to just let them do what they do, which is create offense. And
That's
you know,
what
you
Dean
can make a case
Evison
that's
said
good
when,
coaching.
when the Lightning saw Columbus at the start of the year. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm coming in here. I want this team to get some swagger offensively, which I understand in a way. Like, you just lost Johnny Gaudreau. So are you just
Yeah.
going to, like, say, well, we don't have anybody who can score. We lost Johnny Gaudreau. No. He's like, let's play. I mean, Werenski is a weapon. And Dean Evison, he said this to Brian and me. We had a chat with him after the morning skate. That was the game Columbus beat the Lightning 7-6 in overtime. He's like, I didn't know how good Zach Werenski was until I became his coach. He's like, I'm letting this guy out of the barn.
Yeah, he can play.
He's going to go play, and he's having a great year. He had a great Four Nations face-off tournament, too.
He did.
Yeah.
Columbus has scored the most goals in the Eastern Conference. Actually, I take that back. The Caps at 214. Florida's at 201. Columbus is at
Are these
200.
up-to-date numbers, though? I'm not sure if it's been updated
Yeah, I mean, I'm
after
clicking
tonight.
I'm refreshing, so I'm assuming it is.
Okay.
NHL.com is pretty good about getting
Well,
those
I have
things up to
Columbus
date,
with
especially
a
after-
plus 7 goal differential. So even with their defensive
Yeah.
struggles, I mean,
I
when you
know.
say about outscoring your problems, they've kind of done
Yeah.
that this year.
That's incredible.
I think this
That's
is up
actually
to
an
date because
incredible
it has
stat.
the Red Wings. It has the Red Wings having lost
Yeah.
their last game. So
And as of right now, I mean, the Lightning at 72 points are 3 points behind Florida for first place in the Atlantic.
yeah, with 2 games
And
in hand.
2 games in hand. I mean, that's kind of what you want. And look, we've talked about this on the show. This could be a year where, you know, getting first place makes a difference. It really could. You know,
JP
I
asked
think,
Brian about that on the last call because, I mean,
What did
it's
he
kind of
say?
like we were talking about with the Central. Like, the Lightning in the last 2 years have lost in the first round to both Toronto and Florida. If the Lightning
Yeah.
can get in first, assuming Toronto and Florida don't fall into the wild card, they would be avoiding both of those teams in the first round. I'm going to go back to what I have said, though. It's kind of like you get who you get. I mean, at this point, do you want to get Columbus the way that they are playing? Like, they have some swagger to their game.
Yeah.
Like, if the Lightning got into first and somehow Columbus got the first wild card, they would play Columbus again. I say again because we remember they had those series in back-to-back years. Again, just because you might finish in first place and get a wild card team in the first round does not mean that it's like stamp your ticket to the second round.
But there does feel like there is a pretty wide gap here with the teams at the top in the East and maybe some of these teams trying to sneak in, Detroit and Columbus. And I'll just come out and say it. I mean, if you're a Lightning fan and your option is Detroit or Columbus compared to Toronto or Florida, I mean, that's a no-brainer. It doesn't mean you're going to win, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen the NHL over the years. I mean, in a lot of ways, it is designed to make that first-round matchup a bear. I get it. But I think you have to look at it realistically with how things have played out this year. And if I were to tell you the Lightning are going to have an opportunity to either play Detroit, Columbus, New York, Ottawa, Boston, Montreal, they don't strike fear into me as much as it would a Toronto or a Florida.
Yeah.
And fear is a strong
That's fair.
word. It's just those are good teams.
Right.
Florida and Toronto, they're just really good teams. And they're saying the same thing about the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so if you can avoid that matchup, and look, winning a championship, you've got to have certain matchups go your way.
Mm-hmm.
You meet teams at a certain time. Sometimes you need a little bit of that, I want to call it luck, but things falling into place a bit because you know how grueling the playoffs can be. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but you know me with standings. I don't really pay attention to them. I really don't. I mean, yeah, towards the end, I'll kind of look at the standings and say, yeah, okay, the Lightning, where are they going to finish and who are they going to play? Mm-hmm. For me to be looking at the standings the way I am 58 games in, I think speaks to, one, how well the Lightning have played, but two, kind of, okay, I'm kind of intrigued here because I think this Eastern Conference is up for grabs. I don't know if there's a dominant team. Make the case Tampa Bay is, and I'm fine with that. But this could be one of those where, can I avoid the really intense matchup? Can I avoid it for at least one more round? And if
That's
that
a
means
fair
I've got to
point.
take on Detroit or Columbus, I'm okay with that.
I mean, whoever falls into the wild card, let's assume Washington's going to get the top seed, so they'll get wild card 2. Whoever wins the Atlantic and gets wild card 1, it looks like whoever ends up in wild card 1 is going to be a little bit more of a wet behind the ears team to the playoffs, as opposed to if we presume that it's Tampa Bay, Toronto, and Florida in the top 3, which, I mean, there's still a lot of runway left. We don't know that that's going to be the case.
Right.
But I grant you that by finishing first and avoiding a matchup against either Toronto or Florida, or if you're Florida, avoiding a matchup with Toronto or Tampa Bay, or Toronto avoiding a matchup between the two Florida teams in the first round or against one of the Florida teams, you are getting a less experienced opponent in the playoffs. You just are.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if it's Detroit has Patrick Kane. He's won cups. I understand that, right? And they have some guys who have playoff experience, but it's just different.
Right.
It's just different than seeing a Toronto team that's been to the playoffs every year since 2017.
And look, say what you want, and you've brought up this point, and I think it's valid because you're going to start dissecting things closer. If you start looking at the matchups, the Toronto Vasi factor, I mean, that's in play. That's in play. So why want to take that on in the first round when you could take it on down the road?
Yeah, Toronto might not even
or not have to take
get
it
out
all.
of the first round if
or not even take it at all.
Yeah.
So we can look at those matchups. I can guarantee you the team does too. They just don't say it publicly.
Well, the team is focused on continuing to quote unquote munch points and
munch them,
secure a path to the playoffs. But Steve mentioned to me, this was before the game last night, he said if the Lightning win tonight, they'll be at 72 points, which I have talked about. That's playoff pace with 2 games left in this segment. They could bank some bonus points here. But he said
Yeah.
if they get to 72 points after 58 games, they will have 24 games left, and they will only need 24 points to get to 96, which is usually enough. I like 96 after 80 with the 2 extra games in case you need a point or two, but that's Hockey 500. 24 points in 24 games is Hockey 500. You have as many regulation losses as you have wins. That is what we will call mediocre hockey. I mean, even in their rough month of January, the Lightning were basically at Hockey 500, 7-8-1. They were 1 game below Hockey 500. So they put themselves in a very good position, but there's still 24 games left.
Yep.
And they've kind of cashed in here as the schedule has flipped. I know they had the tough 4 games in 6 days within the division, but they've had a lot of home games. They've been a very good home team. Even in January, where they had that rough stretch in the schedule, they took care of business at home. I mean, I think since the calendar turned, they've only lost 1 home game in regulation, right? That was to Chicago.
Yeah, for sure.
So they have cashed in as the schedule has gotten more favorable. If you're going to frame it as more home games, less travel, favorable, the Lightning have definitely banked those points. They've taken advantage of a favorable twist in the schedule.
Love it.
But the road portion is going to kind of pop up again here, not so much on this trip, but then they have the 6 of 7 on the road after the next homestand. So they still have work to be done. Yeah, they still have work to be done.
Saturday, that's going to be a test. That's going to be a fun game.
Caps will lost 2 straight at home.
Yeah.
I can understand them exhaling a little bit. I mean, I mentioned that, and somebody said, well, Ovechkin. And I get it. Like, they want Ovechkin to get the record, but the reality is they don't have to press the gas all the way to the ground. And they were probably a little flat against Calgary, and it seemed like they were a little flat against St. Louis. They only had 18 shots. So either they're going to boomerang back and be like, we need to correct this now, or they'll be like, yeah, we still have like a however many point lead on the next closest team, and it's going to be hard. Like, we want Ovi to get the record. Let's try and set him up, get some power plays. We'll see.
Get some empty netters.
Came pretty easily for them against Edmonton. Edmonton had that bad defensive performance, and they were just popping in goals left and right, Washington. And then they faced a couple of teams that D'd them up pretty well. So that's what the Lightning need to do. Lightning have to focus on defending the same way.
I think Washington will be ready. I think they'll be ready to go. I think it'll be an intense game. And I'm looking forward to it. You have a safe trip because you're traveling.
We'll be back on the air on Monday. I will be in Sunrise. Yes.
Yep.
Should be a morning skate for the Lightning. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll go live. We'll do it live.
Yes.
And we'll get it going from there. But I will talk to you closer to puck drops, probably around 12:25ish, and then we'll do our show Monday, noon to 1. Partner, great job. Safe travels.
Yeah. Thanks for staying up late with me.
This was fun. Of course. You got it. Thanks to Steve Versnick, Jared Johnson, and everybody who listened. We appreciate you guys so much. I'm Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.